Pigtown has always been about roads and jobs. This neighborhood grew when jobs were plentiful and struggled when those jobs disappeared. We already heard about how Washington Boulevard once was a postal route leading from to South Carolina. But there is another road that played quite a role in the development of this area, and that was Frederick Road. Frederick Road, which is reachable through Pratt, Lombard, and Baltimore Street, was the gateway to the west, expanding west. It led to the National Road, which was the first federal highway project initiated in 1811 and provided a connection for stagecoaches and Conestoga wagons to Virginia, West Virginia, and Ohio and the expanding West. And so, but it was not until after the B&O Railroad became operational in 1830 that Pigtown established itself. America's first common carrier railroad grew the area into neighborhoods of railway workers nicknamed candy dancers, many of them Irish. Now, railroads really ushered America into a period of revolution. They knitted this nation together, and as headquarters of B&O Railroad, Baltimore played a very crucial role in that. And the Mount Clair Depot nearby became an industrial revolution precursor of Silicon Valley, a hotbed of breakthrough inventions. Stockyards and slaughterhouses came next, thanks to B&O's ability to transport livestock. They were such an important part of this community that one section of Washington Boulevard near here was known as Cowtown, Kuhviertel in German, which was spoken by many. As to the pigs roaming around the neighborhood, all those stories are true. The New York Times reported on the most memorable run. It occurred when a train wreck let loose 845 pigs. About half were never recovered. The rest presumably ended up in the pots and pans of big Pigtowners. B&O development provided for the construction of many of the amenities that you see in this area. B&O gave rise to Union Square, Franklin Square, and Lafayette Square. And by the early 1900s, Pigtown was a boomtown. There were jobs galore. What today is the MTA depot employed 400 men. There was a brick factory, 40 men, roof tile factory, 30 men, terracotta, 60, screen company, 75. Hundreds or more were employed by a variety of businesses. One constructed bridges for Guatemala. Now imagine that, bridges in Guatemala built in Pigtown. Others included a brewery, box makers, a cooperage, and glass works. Hundreds were building an electric power station in Westport. Pigtown became a very diverse community. Some sections thrived, others were slums of concentrated poverty, particularly low-lying areas with poor drainage. Pigtown residents included lots of Germans, Irish, African Americans, Lithuanians. One area had so many Orthodox Jews, it was called Little Jerusalem. It had synagogues and even a branch of what became the Jewish Community Center. This Jewish concentration formed because people working in the clothing industry could walk to the garment district near today's campus. Baltimore was a major clothing manufacturing town in those days. Meanwhile, hundreds of row houses were constructed. This is the period when Cary, Carroll, Bayard, and Cleveland streets were built. Baltimore was a segregated city. Pigtown had some mixed pockets, but racial and socioeconomic segregation were strengthened when the federal government in the mid-1930s redlined 239 American cities. Pigtown on those redlining maps was colored red, dangerous for conventional lending. The housing stock was aging, sometimes without plumbing or inside bathrooms. Redlining dried up private investment and infrastructure spending. In the absence of loan money, the neighborhood declined. During World War II, Pigtown became seriously overcrowded. Hundreds of Appalachians moved in. The neighborhood was convenient. Bethlehem Steel's Key Highway shipyard, where the Harborview condominiums is today, and American Visionary Art Museum was located in that area. The shipyard was located in that area and employed 1,300 workers. For the next several decades, the Appalachian influence would be felt. Meanwhile, old-timers took advantage of FHA and GI mortgages to move further out to houses with modern conveniences. The areas west of Martin Luther King Boulevard were in the midst of these socioeconomic changes in the 1960s when planning began for what was to become Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Reading the project's environmental impact statement prepared in 1975, one thing is striking: a total absence of discussion about neighborhoods along its route. 14 years had passed from the riots when the 1.5 mile City Boulevard opened in 1982. By now, much of West Baltimore, north of Pigtown, had become predominantly black. That rotation had been hastened by the 1968 riots. The main retail stretch on Baltimore Street never recovered from the riots. The new 6-lane road connecting I-83 and I-95 did nothing to improve that situation. Instead, it separated the residents from the city's efforts to revitalize the district around Lexington Market and the once vibrant Howard Street department store district. Among neighborhoods that the road cut in half was Pigtown. Its eastern portion included a row house where Babe Ruth was born. That section was given a new name, Ridgely's Delight. Meanwhile, the real estate industry wanted to get rid of the Pigtown moniker on the west side of the road, preferring Washington Village. Throughout this time, the University of Maryland sat on the sidelines. Its campus steadily expanded, but always east, toward the Hippodrome Theater and Howard Street, two focuses of the city's revitalization efforts. The only direction we can logically go long-term is east. The university's architect, Robert Tenenbaum, told me in 1994. In 2005, that changed. UMAB jumped across Martin Luther King Boulevard, spurred by a $100 million redevelopment loan from the city. It inaugurated its biotech park. Since then, UMAB has greatly increased its footprint and now is about to construct a 10-story gateway tower. All this is reshaping the west side from Poppleton to Pigtown, from Hollins Market to Union Square. Gentrification is proceeding. Benefits for the once thriving retail corridors are yet to materialize, though. Much of the groundwork has been done. Look at the rehabbed storefronts on Baltimore Street. Largely still vacant, they are ready for takeoff. The story is echoed along Washington Boulevard. Thank you. Many Baltimore neighborhoods are in an unending rotation from one socioeconomic group, race or ethnicity, to another. We are now witnessing the latest chapter in the evolution of Pigtown, gentrification. A caveat is in order, however. Neighborhood turnarounds in Baltimore, if they happen at all, happen here at a much slower pace than in Washington, D.C. The MLK Boulevard remains a demarcation line. Its defects are well understood. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard's design continues to neglect to multimodal transportation needs of its users. Up to 53% of West Baltimoreans do not have access to a car. The physical nature of the roadway perpetuates years of segregation and disinvestment in low-income communities left untouched. Thousands of Baltimoreans will continue to miss out on life's opportunities, a city report stated last year. If we want to see a real turnaround in city neighborhoods like Pigtown, the MTA transit system has to be overhauled. Service has to become more reliable and more frequent. At the present time, it is so deficient that when Amazon first came to Baltimore, the company created its own bus system to ferry workers to its facilities in East Baltimore. The same with UMAB. Its shuttle buses stop in Poppleton, Hollins Market, Union Square, and Pigtown. Good for students and faculty members, but not satisfactory at all for the general public. Thank you.